Hi, and welcome to the October 2017 Corporate Compliance, Fraud, Waste, and Abuse webinar. This presentation is being recorded and will be published on our website and in the Insider newsletter next week. At this time, I want to introduce you to today's presenters, Chad Schiffman and Michelle Lyman. Chad, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Today we're just going to talk about a few new courses that we have available. Really, they're updated courses that are essentially our corporate compliance and our fraud, waste, and abuse, or both. So we've updated those courses as well as launched another course as well. So we're going to talk about that. But first, we want to just talk about some of the background and why we've decided to do these changes. So. You know, corporate compliance and fraud, waste, and abuse are two CMS required trainings. And basically it boils down to CMS has said that employees must participate in a fraud, waste, and abuse training program before December 31st annually if their employer participates or contracts with Medicare Advantage or Part D prescription plans. And that's, you know, that's really what we're looking at there as Part C and D. If you do that, then yes, you must actually do fraud, waste, and abuse. From there, you know, there are some other factors such as does your plan sponsor and those types of things. We'll talk about that a little bit later as we work through this. The other thing is general compliance training. You know, what we're talking about here is you can actually, you can have it as a separate course now. You don't have to have them both in the same course offering. So we've decided that that might be an easier way for clients to understand what they need to have on an annual basis. And then lastly, the training content is generic. That just means that everybody has to have this exact same version of the general compliance training. So that's what we're talking about with that. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide, and then I think Michelle's going to take it from there for a minute.
Thanks, Chad. So when you're looking at the courses, you'll notice that there is a certificate of completion, just like with all of our other courses, and that's generated upon passing a short test at the end of the course, and they have to get 70% or higher at the end of the training module. You as administrators on the call today, just note if you have an employee who comes to you and says, hey, I took the training, but I never got a certificate, they probably didn't push through to the very end and click finish course. So if you have a problem with that, let us know. We can probably just help you out with that, or just make sure that your employee actually has finished the module. Just a little hint there. And then in certain circumstances, you may have a licensing body that's going to accept completion certificates. And with the Hours for Healthcare Professionals who'd like continuing education credit. So just know that that's something that you can access as well. And also HCP offers a corporate compliance module that has CME credits. Now this module includes the required corporate compliance training language and that optional fraud, waste, and abuse training. And so if you do have providers that are, or other mid-levels who are looking for CME credits, they will be able to take that course and get those credits for the corporate compliance.
Right, and that's the question that we get frequently, and that course is available, so we're real excited about that. You know, this next slide, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about at the sponsor's request, like we talked about earlier. And here's where it gets interesting: is this is not, don't think of this in terms of corporate compliance. Whether you participate in A, B, C, or D, that general compliance training, everybody absolutely has to have that, period. There's no getting around that. What we're talking about here is when we're talking about FDRs with the attestation, this is more along the lines of the fraud, waste, and abuse. So what they're saying is, okay, so are you deemed to have met this requirement from taking fraud, waste, and abuse? And by that, to be deemed, generally you have to be participating in A or B. In those parts. If you participate in C or D only by chance, you would absolutely have to take fraud, waste, and abuse training. There are a few caveats to that, like plan sponsors. Sometimes plan sponsors will ask you to actually complete fraud, waste, and abuse training as part of your, you know, your contract that you have with them. Generally, what we see though is that plan sponsors just want an attestation at that point. So. Another reason why we've gone ahead and separated these out into two separate courses. But like we've mentioned on here, you should definitely check with your plan sponsors to see what your options are. Should you attest, or can you, or is it an actual process that you have to actually complete? But do know that the courses that we are about to show you and talk about today are all acceptable formats, and it should be all you need to take care of those requirements.
Thanks, Chad. And here's just a side note. Some of those FDRs who have deemed to have met the fraud, waste, and abuse training and education certification requirements through parts A and B, like Chad has been talking about, and also those who are suppliers of DME POS are not exempt from the general compliance training requirements. So that's kind of a big deal. Please note that general compliance training requirement is a requirement across the board. And then we get a lot of questions about when should the training be completed. And the training must occur within 90 days of initial hire. So just keep that in mind when you're bringing on a new employee, that they must complete this type of training before 90 days is out, before their 3-month period, and then annually thereafter. And the regulation is just that the annual training can be completed anytime between January 1st and December 31st of any given contract year. And now we're going to just look at the actual website. So I'm going to take over the presentation and show my screen at this point. And this should look very familiar to everyone on the call. This is an account level demo account. When you go into the account level, the first thing that you always see is the dashboard. And just as a reminder, when you go into that dashboard, always refresh the data so that you can see the most up-to-date information on your reports. But today, because we're talking about the courses, I'm going to go into the Courses tab. And today we're looking at corporate compliance. And so this is where Chad and I were explaining that the courses are broken out into multiple course options now. Chad, do you want to talk to us about this first course, the CMS Corporate Compliance?
Yeah, so this past couple of years, we've had a CMS Corporate Compliance course that included, both the fraud, waste, and abuse elements and the general compliance training elements, and we had that all put into one course. Also included with this course was a lot of the OIG compliance plan elements, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. And the way you can think of it is part 1 was really fraud, waste, and abuse, part 2 was your corporate compliance, and then part 3 was the OIG compliance plan elements. And so what we've decided to do with these is, rather than just stick them all into one course, we thought, well, why not? It makes better sense just for us to go ahead and offer 3 separate courses, and it might help some clients, make sure that, well, for one, everybody knows what they're taking, and so they can just hop in and wait, is fraud and abuse included in this, or is my compliance, So we decided, well, let's go ahead and do this. So as we move down, I think I'll turn it back over to Michelle and let her talk about the CMS General Compliance course here real quick.
Okay, so the CMS General Corporate Compliance course is the course that we were talking about that is required for everyone. And so the CMS General Compliance, it's a quick course. It does meet the CMS requirements. It's the exact course that CMS provides on an annual basis. And CMS does update this course every year, and HCP will be monitoring those updates and making sure that those changes are made every year as CMS does make those minor changes for their general compliance training. And so you can be assured that when you offer this course to your staff that they're receiving a good general compliance course, but also that it meets those requirements through CMS and perhaps your payers if they're requiring you to attest.
And see, with this course, there might be certain clients that might be all you really need to take. And that might be, hey, let's just have our employees do this on an annual basis, and you might still opt to have them do this fraud, waste, and abuse course that we'll go ahead and show next. Now, this fraud, waste, and abuse course, like we mentioned previously, if you do participate in C&D, or if like your plan sponsors are telling you they want you to take this course, this meets the exact requirements from CMS. This first year training that's in here is all CMS language. It's all the required language that you need to have for fraud, waste, and abuse. So you can opt to have people take that. Notice that it's considerably longer. It's 54 slides versus 30 some odd slides that were in the compliance plan course. What's important to note with this as well is this course in the second year, we will offer a refresher option. Now with this refresher option would be for those who are taking this as an optional training. This is still currently in development because we haven't even launched the first year of it, so we figure we'll wait and offer the second year as we add our scenarios and stuff. And that's really what it's going to cover. It's going to cover some scenarios, some of the new stuff that's happening in the world of fraud, waste, and abuse. So that might be good optional training if you don't need to take fraud, waste, and abuse, and that's who that would be the intended audience for.
And then finally, we wanted to talk about the OIG compliance plan. Originally, this OIG compliance plan language, or at least a portion of it, was included as Section 3 in the CMS Corporate Compliance course, which many of you are probably using at this point. But we've now separated out the OIG compliance plan, and it is a great course. And Chad, do you want to just talk to us a little bit about why this is an important course to think about adding?
So a lot of times, there were a lot of questions of where is my OIG compliance plan, or where is my compliance plan is really what we would get. And there's all 7, we call it 8 elements in our course that it has throughout. And those are all now housed in one course. So, you know, you've got your commitment to compliance in there. You know, you've got your compliance officer duties and information in there. You know, we also include like a grievance procedure. That's in this course as well. So it just provides a nice one-stop shop where people can go ahead and log in and say, oh, here, I have some questions about who to contact in this scenario. It's here now. So this is a good place. You can add to it, customize it as needed. As you can see, there are some customizations to this course already. And so if there's certain elements that you want to add to your plan, you could certainly stick them in here. We get a lot of requests for this, and so it just made better sense. We thought to offer it as a separate course and make it easy. And we think, too, that offering them as smaller courses will be beneficial to your staff because they'll be able to get in and, you know, they might have only a few minutes to take the OIG compliance plan training for a lunch or something one day, and maybe they could hop in and do that. Or, you know, they might opt to do the general compliance when they have just a few moments on one day, and now they can do that a little bit easier versus having to do it all at once. So we're hoping that this will be beneficial to practices.
And also the nice thing about this is you know that in your offices you've got that reference guide, and so you go into the office reference guide and you'll be able to open up that OIG compliance plan as a document. And so if we go back up to our dashboard and let's just go into our clinical department, for example. When we look at the dashboard here and go to that reference guide, here's your OIG compliance plan as a printable and searchable document. So that's another one of the reasons that we decided to split out the OIG compliance plan, was not only because you could offer it as a training so your staff members would be very aware of what was going on with your plan, but also you could have it as a printable document that you could share and review. And then let's go back out to the account again. Chad, we, you know, before we started the webinar today, Chad and I were talking about all of the disasters that have gone on across our country, and so concerned for those involved, and our thoughts go out to all of you who have been impacted. And so we wanted to take just a moment to talk about a couple of other courses. So Chad, can we just talk about the emergency preparedness program or maybe the disaster recovery plan for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. We have plenty of time, it looks like. So yeah, let's go ahead and start with the disaster recovery plan, since that's a course that we've had implemented for a while. You know, that it's really a HIPAA requirement to have a disaster recovery plan. So that's why we've created this module. We've kept it short and concise to where, you know, it starts out as almost like a template, really. You can run through and customize it like you're familiar with doing with most of the courses that we have. And what we've done with this is we've tried to make it really easy for anybody to understand, you know, what to do in the event of a disaster. So you can use this as a template. You can get in and customize it. You can add to it, hide slides. We've had clients use it for numerous reasons and different things. And we have clients just use it as is with their customization. So that's an option that you can use here. As part of the disasters, we made sure that we gave these out to clients who were impacted. So if you were one that was impacted by it, please reach out to us. Or if you have questions about a disaster recovery plan, also reach out to us. We'd like to talk to you and make sure that we get that added for you. The emergency preparedness program works kind of hand in hand with that. It's going to be a little bit, so this came about because of the CMS requirement for certain providers that need to have it, certain provider types. I think there's 17 different provider types that needed to have an emergency plan, and so that's why we put this into place. If you notice, it's got the requirements that have to be answered. It's part of the risk assessment factor of it. Basically, part of this was to have a risk assessment, then build it into an emergency plan, compliance plan, and those types of things. All of that has been added here for you. This can be used, once again, as a template to create your actual emergency plan. You can customize it, use it as is, similar to the disaster recovery plan. So we're pretty excited about this one. This one's actually going to be ready rather soon. We're going to have it available and published. This is currently in beta version, but it should be ready here within the next couple of days and be published as a course. So.
Right. So again, all of these modules, if you go into the dashboard and go over to your office, they are available in the reference guide, so they're all printable. So after you put together the emergency preparedness program or your disaster recovery plan, and you've got those all fleshed out with all of your additional customization, it might be a good plan for you to go ahead and publish those in a written format so that you've got those for review. So let's just do an overview of what we've got here again, Chad, for the course options, and then sure. We'll take any questions that you have. Again, if you do have questions, go ahead and type them into your dashboard, and we'll be happy to answer them. So let's just, if you don't mind, Chad, just going over
sure.
who uses what.
Right. So the CMS Corporate Compliance Plan, that's the one that CMS mandated for the C&D participants, and a lot of clients just chose to err on the side of caution and take that. So you can still continue to do so and be in compliance. That's perfectly fine if you want to still take that course. If you would like to branch them out, the CMS General Compliance, that's one that everybody, regard A, B, C, or D participants, you should take that course. Doesn't matter which one. Fraud, waste, and abuse, that should be the C&D participants, or if you've been required to take it by your plan sponsors. OIG compliance plan, once again, if you would like to have a separate OIG compliance plan that includes those elements, everybody should activate that. I think that would be good for everybody to activate, even if you do have the course. That's my opinion on that one. I think everybody should have that one. And then as we scroll down, we can talk about disaster recovery plan and emergency preparedness plan. We highly recommend reaching out to us for those if you don't have something already currently in place.
Thank you. And we did just get a question, and the question is, are all of these courses available within the scheme of our standard contract? And that would be yes. These corporate compliance courses are available to you. And you just need to reach out to your representative at Healthcare Compliance Pros and arrange to have the correct courses activated for your program.
Do we have any other questions come in?
I think that's the only one so far.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Maybe we answered the questions about compliance, the compliance plan and the general compliance well enough. I know that we've had a lot of questions come in about that. I think it's just the time of year where sponsors are asking for those attestations and if you've actually completed it. So if you do fall into that category, do reach out to us. We'll make sure that you're covered.
Let's talk about the attestation for just a moment, Chad. In each of these courses, there is an attestation slide where the person who's taking the course needs to attest that they understand and that they've agreed, to the information that they've received. But there's a different kind of attestation from the pairs at times where they require something from the client.
Right. And these, and this is that training that they're asking about. This is what they want to make sure you have. The only thing that we can't cover is if you have like an individual, let's call it insurance company, who reaches out to you, and they have their own set of, it's like a policy statement that they release, and they want you to review and make sure you understand their policy or their particular thing. So you may have to review that, but otherwise you're covered for the CMS, all the CMS elements. We do have those for you. So.
Perfect. So I think that's about everything that we wanted to cover today, unless you have any additional comments that you'd like to wrap up with, Chad.
No, I think that's it. That's what we wanted to get across. And, you know, we do want to let you know that we will do an announcement in our newsletter that goes back over this and talks about these points. So watch for the Compliance Insider, and you'll see when this is actually. So I guess, do you want to talk about that real quick, Michelle, about how these are available to those who are on the on the call today, but we're actually going to do a compliance newsletter announcement of these courses?
Yeah. So everyone on the call today, if you wanted to, you know, within the next week or so, reach out to your client relations specialist or contact here at Healthcare Compliance Pros and arrange for an update of your corporate compliance training, that's great. We would be happy to help you with that as a favor to you for being here with us today. You'll be the first people to be able to access these new trainings, which is kind of exciting, and we're happy to be able to offer that to you as participants. So really, that's what's next, is just contact your HCP specialist to make sure that you've got that correct training, and ask about the OIG compliance plan if that is something that you're interested in. So that's where we're at, and I think I'll just turn the time back over to Nicole for housekeeping.
Great. Thank you, Michelle and Chad. We appreciate everyone attending today's webinar. And just as a reminder, we do hold monthly webinars on the second Thursday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We did record this webinar, and we will publish it on our website later today, as well as submit it to our newsletter every Wednesday for you to enjoy. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.